The Padres Hot Tub is proudly presented once again by our guy Wally at Estate Leak Detection and Plumbing, a San Diego independent company here for all of your plumbing concerns, and one of Chris Reed's childhood friends who's grown into something big. He's all done grown up now, Chris. He's all done grown up.
Absolutely. And he went and got a grown-up job fixing people's entire lives, because when you don't have hot water or you don't have a toilet, your life is done fucked up. Like, sorry to curse in the ad read right away, but that's what happens. We take all this plumbing for granted. Wally never did. He went and educated himself on how to fix it. And now that's what he's doing for people all over San Diego County.
All right. The explicit version of letting you know that at 619-300-7203, you can talk to Wally yourself. You can get somebody that is reliable and trustworthy, isn't going to try and highball you on the cost or invent $20,000 of repair that you don't need. You always want somebody when you're stuck in a corner like that, when your life gets turned upside down in an hour flat, and you're like, all of a sudden, my beautiful house no longer works. 619-300-7203. Save it in your phone. Estate Leak Detection and Plumbing in San Diego. Welcome to the Padres Hot Tub, everybody. Craig Elsten, Chris Reed, Raphie Cantor. We are coming to you on Monday, June 12th, recording right around the lunchtime hour as the San Diego Padres enjoy a day off, preparing for an extraordinarily consequential 10-game stretch that will start with series at home against American League opponents Cleveland and Tampa Bay, and then extend to a 4-game series out in San Francisco. We've got a lot to talk about on today's show. And of course, we are coming to you in your podcast feed. If you're one of our OG listeners, you're listening to the audio show. But if you don't know, Padres Hot Tub for the last couple of months now has also been a YouTube show. We are on video. Subscribe to the Padres Hot Tub channel where you can see our smiling faces, only somewhat partially covered by microphones in some circumstances. And we've got an incentive for you to become a part of our video community as well. In fact, we've got a pair of very nice tickets to see the Padres take on the Washington Nationals. That's on June 23rd, right, Raphie?
That's correct. Friday, June 23rd.
All right. We've got 2 tickets to Nationals Padres, and all you need to do is subscribe to our YouTube channel, which almost 600 people have done already, and leave a comment on either this week's show or last week's show. We had a whole passel of great comments on last week's show. We'd love to see another bushel of great comments on this week's program, and then we'll add up all of the folks and throw them into the hopper, and we'll draw out a winner. Must be able to use the tickets. But we've even had people, guys from like Sweden and parts unknown, say like, hey, I'm traveling, I'm in Europe, I can't use the tickets, but I wanted to comment and support the feed. So please subscribe, comment, click the like button, of course, help the algorithm discover Padres Hot Tub as a show. And you could be going to Padres Nationals on us.
I also want to point out for the geriatric millennials and older folks out there that YouTube is not, you may think YouTube and podcasts, what? Well, that's exactly what YouTube has now. They have YouTube Music. You can have it playing on the background of your phone. I learned about this listening to Pods Above Replacement, where you learn all sorts of stuff. So YouTube is not just for the video anymore. It is for an audio medium as well. And if you see something, you hear something cool, like, oh, maybe I do want to see Chris's amazing, beautiful face, you can just pull up your phone and it's going to be right where you're listening to in the moment. So definitely check out YouTube, get our numbers up there, guys, because they're powerful. and can do a lot of great things for our show.
All right. So for the non-patrons, we've had an ad followed by a promotion. Why don't we deliver some content? Hey, HJ, this is for you, all right? So here's some content now that you've found your way through all the rest of it. We've got a lot, again, like I said, to talk about, but we're going to keep doing this until we get there, guys. This has now been a 3-week running theme. We have a target score, so to speak. We have a target record for the Padres to get to the All-Star break with a chance to be relevant. And I think it's increasingly clear that 2 games over 500 is a relevant space in the National League. It's been 12 games since we set our target mark, guys, of 22-15. The Padres have gone 7-5 in those 12 games. They have slowly crept their way toward the target, but there are 25 games remaining until the All-Star break, and the Padres need to go 15-10 the rest of the way, 15-10 to be 2 games over 500 at the All-Star break. I would also note that currently the cut line in the field of the National League is 2 games over 500. That's where the third wild card spot currently resides. Milwaukee is in that spot. The Padres are 2.5 games back of Milwaukee, but that is, it seems, it's a line that we set that was somewhat arbitrary, but it seems to be a line that is somewhat relevant as well. So with the target information having been placed out there, Chris, what's your level of confidence right now after the Padres did win 5 out of 7 most recently?
I'm feeling pretty good about it, Craig. We're recording this after another disappointing game. Our moods during these shows seem to kind of reflect what happened the day before, but not mine today, man. I am perfectly happy with that series win. That's what I think they need to get doing. Sweeps are nice, winning streaks are better, but series wins are what will build your season success. And they went into Coors and they did that, including winning a 1-run game, if you can imagine. Yay! So I'm feeling all right about it, man. They got the Guardians coming up and the Rays, which will certainly be a huge test for this team. I think they can do it. And I think that one of our YouTube commenters is going to get to watch them beat the Nationals when they come. So that it's good. I'm feeling good, baby.
Bold predictions.
Yeah,
Floating.
beating the Nationals. I'm putting my reputation on the line.
Chris, pardon me, Raphie, the trend had been, last time we talked on group therapy, it was 9-1, 6-1. Padres did use their off day to good effect. They broke that stretch and then won a 3-run scored game in Coors Field, but really did struggle again on Sunday. And I think when you factor Coors into it just a little bit, I'm not entirely sure the Padres are 100% out of their offensive woes just yet.
No, and I think I wish I remembered who it was in our Discord who said this. I'm gonna try and find it and plug it at the end of the episode. But when the weekend began, they said something along the lines of the Padres will find a way to win the Weathers game and lose the Lamet game. And boy, was that bang on. I between the putting up 3 runs on Saturday and finally winning a 1-run game, which they then turned around the next day and lost a 1-run game. But playing by the skin of our teeth. And then the next day on Sunday, looking fairly pedestrian against a truly terrible starting pitcher in Nelson Lamet was not heartening. I think you have to grade everything based on the Coors curve, and you might say, "Oh, we put up 4 runs yesterday. Like that's not terrible." But on the Coors curve, that's like 2, honestly. So I'm not feeling like we are quite out of the woods yet in terms of our team's offensive issues. And I'm sure we'll be breaking down yesterday's games and specifically bullpen management and stuff. I'd love to talk a little bit about that later. But in terms of the road ahead, boy, is there not a better match for us right now to see where we're at than the Cleveland Guardians, in my opinion. Because if you think the Padres offense is bad, take a look at the Guardians. Okay. They have had a truly abysmal offense this year, and they're going to come play in Petco Park. And I haven't checked the weather forecast, but I'm sure the Marine Layer is going to be there. And it's almost like the shitty offense Highlander. There can only be one. And so who is it going to be this week? Is it going to be the Padres? Is it going to be the Guardians? We'll find out, but certainly a big test ahead, Craig.
It's one of my oldest repeated baseball axioms, something I literally have been saying since back on the radio in the late 90s. And I haven't said it that often of late on Padres Hot Tub, but it does bear repeating. I believe there's no point in looking at the standings until you get to 500. To me, I generally ignore the standings until you get to 500. And the reason for that is very simple. If you're below 500, you're not a playoff team. And I know that, the 2005 Padres are a team that existed. And I know that the strike year 1994, the American League West team was going to be like, I think the leader was 6 or 8 games under 500 when they went to strike. So there's like the once every 10 years or once every 20 years aberration or the exception that proves the rule. But in general, you don't even look at the standings till you get to 500. The Padres are 3 games under 500 until then you just worry about how far you are underwater. Can we get back to above water? I just briefly break that to note, because I really don't. I really don't stare at the standings unless we are relevant in them, that the Dodgers had a rough patch, and the Arizona Diamondbacks are 3.5 games clear right now in the NL West and have themselves a gorgeous 40-25 record, the kind of record that Padre fans surely dreamed, nay, expected the club to have around this time of the year. So I wanted to briefly get your guys' thoughts as the Diamondbacks play .615 baseball and are tied for the best record in the National League with the Atlanta Braves. What your level of concern is at this stage, now 65 games, about the Arizona Diamondbacks and the fact that the Padres are 9 games behind them.
Very. I wanted to win the National League West, Craig. It was our destiny until the season started, and it was not. The Diamondbacks have a good young team that are playing modern baseball extremely well. They're slugging, they're fast as heck, and they're playing good defense. They got Brent Strom coaching up their pitchers, so their bullpen's overperforming, and they've got 2 fantastic ace caliber starting pitchers on top of their rotation. The Diamondbacks are a solid team. Now, they've also won a whole bunch of 1-run games and have some weird voodoo magic happening with them. They had a comeback win last night. So they have this, that magical, intangible clutch thing happening for them. And I don't think that will be consistent throughout the season. So I don't think they're going to be a 15 win above 500 team at the end of the year. But are they going to be in contention for the title? Yeah, for sure. And the Padres have the ability to get there, but they have a whole lot of ground to make up, dude.
Raphie, the Padres are 9 games behind the Diamondbacks in the standings. If you expand out to expected win-loss, which I looked this up and double-checked, it does not count. Expected win-loss is a made-up thing.
I've written letters to Rob Manfred, and he has not responded to me. So
we want a Pythagorean playoff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it does have a very strong "just find me the 11,000 votes" type vibe to expected win-loss. Okay, but I say that to say the expected win-loss for the Diamondbacks right now is 37-28, which is still a great record, but is a full 8 games off what they're doing. And the Padres' expected win-loss is 35-30. They'd be a game back instead of 9 games back. So it looks like there's some room here for the Padres to take advantage of, Raphie.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought that up. That was going to be literally the next thing I said. And just to piggyback something off of that you have said, Chris, in the past, you know, the Diamondbacks are beating the snot out of bad teams. You know, they are 17-15 against teams above 500, and they're 23-10 against teams below 500. The Dodgers are 14-15, have a losing record against teams above 500, and they are 23-14 against teams below 500. The Padres are 17-20 against teams above 500, and they are 14-14 against teams below 500. Okay. Also, you know, I don't want to jump the gun too much on something I know we're about to talk about later, but I was curious about their 1-run record, Chris, since you just brought it up. The Diamondbacks winning a bunch of 1-run games. They're 10-8 in 1-run games, which is, you know, above 500, but it's not.
That's worse than I thought. Truth be
It's
told,
not, yeah, it's not like totally insanely. It's not the 30-17 that the Padres were last year in 1-run games. So, and they're also 0-2 in extra inning games. Similarly, the Dodgers are 6-8 in 1-run games and 2-0 in extra inning games. The Padres 0-5 in extra innings, 4-12 in 1-run games. So, you know, I think when you bring up the obviously the 1-run and the extra inning record goes hand in hand with the Pythagorean, because if you're losing close games and you're winning games by a lot, that you're going to have a much stronger Pythagorean win-loss record, and this is something that I think is certainly indicative of that. And I just wanted to go to the Fangraphs playoff odds because interestingly enough, the Diamondbacks, despite having a 3.5 game lead in the NL West at this point, have a 74.5% chance of making the playoffs, according to Fangraphs. The Dodgers have a 90.6, and we, the Padres, have a 54.5% chance of making the playoffs. I've said that stat every week, since we set our target stat, and you might think like, wow, Raphie, like that sounds very similar. It's because since on May 20th, we had a 54.3% chance of making the playoffs, and we've been kind of zigzagging a little bit on that axis. And now, so that was May 20th. And now on June 12th, we have basically the exact same chance of making the playoffs. We have done absolutely nothing to kind of dig ourselves out of the hole that we've been in since May 20th, just from a purely projection standpoint. So, yeah, it's a big test coming up, and dropping games like yesterday's certainly does not help.
For my portion of this, I want to remind everyone that baseball is stupid and that nobody should watch this sport. We spend the whole winter dreaming about what our team will be. We spend February and March watching them in a funhouse exaggerated setting and coming up with scenarios, good, bad, and middling, and coming up with predictions. And then we watch a month worth of games, and we have to tell ourselves the whole time that everything we're watching is stupid and meaningless, and that we shouldn't ascribe meaning to anything we see. And then we get to the 40 game mark, and it's human nature. We go, well, no, now we can do it. Now we can ascribe meaning to what we see. We're at least 25% of the way through. At least we can say something that we've watched matters, doesn't it? And we start to do that, and then things change. And then we get to where we are now. We get to the 60 game mark, and we start to, well, come on. I mean, isn't this what the team is? Isn't this what they are? Isn't this what they're going to be? And the same thing is done for teams that get off to unrealistically good starts as it is for teams that get off to unrealistically poor starts. And it turns out that nothing matters ever because you play 162 games, and in the end, it's gonna even out. Okay? It's gonna even out. You want to know why the Diamondbacks are 9 games ahead of the Padres? It's very, very simple. It took me 2 minutes looking at their stats to go, okay, I understand exactly where the Diamondbacks are. The Diamondbacks right now have 8 players OPSing at 790 or above. 8. Okay? The Padres have 3. 4 if you want to count Alfonso Rivas's week.
And we do. We definitely do.
all right. So
it's real.
The Padres have 3. The Diamondbacks have 8. They are hitting the ball really well. They're scoring runs. They have guys they did not expect to be quality producers like Gerardo Perdomo and Evan Longoria And even a couple of guys, when I opened it up, I was like, I'm not even really sure who this guy is. And he's got 130 at bats and he's got an OPS of, like 820. They've gotten a lot of really positive offensive performances in the first 65 games of their season. But I look at their pitching staff and it's not going to make it through the summer. It's not going to make it through the summer. There's no chance. It's not gonna. So on one side, I believe Padre fans can feel firmly confident that their team in the marathon has stronger legs underneath it, okay, and has the ability to outpace Arizona over the course of the next 4 months, potentially, quite possibly pass them in the standings. I do believe that. And on one side, you should have that confidence. But the thing you do have to consider is that Arizona has the ability to improve. And the fact that they are where they are, they have a very obvious way to improve. And it is to add 3 bullpen arms to their team and add 1 starter. I mean, really, just adding 3 bullpen arms to their team, one of which you could maybe rely on late in the innings, late in games and late innings, that would do everything to cinch up where Arizona is. Because right now, Andrew Chafin is their leading closer. He's a lefty relief specialist guy in general. That's not going to last. But going out and snagging somebody that can come in and help, or more importantly, a passel of somebody's that could come in and help their bullpen, I think would really improve Arizona's chance as a contender. So on one side, I really don't believe in the 65-game Diamondbacks, but they've got the ability to change the nature of their team at the deadline because they've got the prospects. They've got a full stocked farm system. They've got very few payroll commitments. They are not leveraged at all. So they're kind of where we were in 2020. And with that, hopefully they make an Austin Nola trade and they blow out a lot of their farm system for a bad
They're not going
player.
to do it. They're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. They don't have a cocaine cowboy as general manager. Okay. So that's number one. And number two, they also don't have ownership as ambitious as Peter Seidler to then make the payroll commitments that they need. And that is a bad thing. That is a bad thing. And the Diamondbacks in general are going to suffer for it. But it does prevent those kind of moves that enable someone like an AJ Preller to go out and make a huge commitment that, might, hamstring the franchise in years to come. It is that thing that you were saying about the Padres in 2020, where they're almost hitting their window a year too early, where like they got too hot, they got a hot hand, and now they got to go out and buy and spend from the farm when they might have wanted this year to just keep building up and keep building up and keep building up. I think that one of the things we talked about in Pods Above Replacement that came out yesterday was about roster construction and the correlation between expected wins and this certain profiles of hitters and pitchers that you have. And in terms of the Diamondback staff, the ace war to expected wins is a much lower correlation than having a lot of really strong hitters. And this was the thing that I will say on last week's pod, I was quite pessimistic about one AJ Preller and the chances that we win something under his reign. But doing this episode, I had a little bit more respect for his method of roster construction, which is essentially the number of 4 WAR hitters that you have has the highest correlation to expected wins. And the idea behind it is that our top 4 are just themselves, that has an incredibly high correlation to expected wins, and it's the strongest. It's stronger than having a depth, the number of 2 WAR players. It's stronger than the number of 2 WAR pitchers you have. It's stronger than having an ace and then an okay staff, and it's stronger than having a good bullpen. It's offense wins championships is the idea, or at least offense gets you to the playoffs. And so I think you're absolutely right, Craig, in that I think are still constructed in a way that is sustainable. But the other thing that this Pods Above Replacement episode talked about is that the error bars on a stars and scrub roster are a lot wider. And that's exactly what we've seen. It's exactly what we've seen. So I think that we can feel okay, but we've been saying it for a month now. They got to turn on at some point. When's it going to be, Craig? When's it going to be, Chris? I don't know, but it's got to be soon.
Well, to wit, and that's a good place to transition, Raphie. Well done on the segue. I kind of thought that the answer was now going through this weekend. I think I even, and I rarely tweet. It's usually like when I have to check my direct messages and then I've got something to say and I'm like, oh, I'll throw a tweet up here. But I said, like, you can kind of feel like this is a team on the verge of a breakout. And I started to feel a lot more confident once again. And I kind of still do. Um, about the position I held at the beginning of the year, which was team is going to come out and struggle. Tatis will come back and they'll struggle some more. And then they're going to hit an arbitrary point. And from that point forward, they're going to be one of the best teams in baseball. And I thought that point was going to be May 15th. That turned about to be the opposite. That's when they went into their worst stretch, their 4-13 stretch. I thought maybe it was the last Cubs game. Maybe it was Soto's 5-for-5 game, getting something started for this team. And then they go in to Colorado and they win a great game on Friday. Just a really, really good game. And then I thought Saturday, honestly, was an even more important win because we were worried about Freeland shutting them down. And he did limit things, but the Padres did score early through Machado and then Weathers on the mound. But the Padres took an aggressive tack and pulled Weathers after one turn and 3 innings and went to a high leverage bullpen situation. And they pulled out that game 3-2 and then went out on Sunday. And honestly, like they were winning the game the whole way, till the end. They were completely buzzard-lucked by the weather. And there's no getting around it. It's something that is truly, truly irritating, low-grade irritating, is how umpiring crews make their decision based on score and time and do not do it based on the simple, is it safe? Is it a proper time to play baseball? That should be their guide. They tried to play through an absolute downpour at the end of that game where no one knows what the hell is going on. And Cosgrove tried to throw a slider into the right-handed batter's box and hung it on the inside corner to a left-handed batter on 0-2, and it was hit for a home run. And then, because it's 4-4, they let the ground screw run out. But if that guy had fouled out or hit it foul and struck out, they would have let the game continue in an absolute downpour. So that downpour directly contributed to Juan Soto not homering an inning before because he put it into, the pellets of rain, as he put it 412 feet to the center field wall. It directly contributed to the Padres losing the game. They had warmed up Nick Martinez to come into the game, and then the game was called. And so Martinez was unavailable to pitch the clutch 9th inning. And instead, Homer Honeywell came in and was like, second I saw his ass out on the mound, I was like, game's over. And it took like 2 minutes for the game to be over. This will help us transition into some Melvin talk and a question from one of our patrons. But I truly didn't have the emotional reaction to Sunday's game that a lot of the members of our Discord did, guys. I thought it was a bummer. I thought it was a super unlucky game. And obviously you want to score 8 runs off to Nelson Lamet. And Soto hit a bases loaded rocket, 105 miles an hour, that was converted into a double play. The Padres kind of hitting bad luck to some extent. And yes, you really wish you had capped that sweep. But the people that were really, really digging in on Bob Melvin for his bullpen management in the game, I don't think, Raphie, that they had any clue like what was going on, that Hader was down, that Martinez was affected, and that Melvin was playing with a short hand.
Absolutely. Just looking at the usage chart, there were only 3 pitchers who hadn't thrown the day before, and those were Tom Cosgrove, Luis Garcia, and Brent Honeywell. So those were the 3 pitchers that we saw. Nick Martinez would have been coming in after 2 consecutive days work of almost 20 pitches each. And Steven Wilson, he had only worked on Saturday. He hadn't worked on Friday, but he threw 27 pitches. So Tim Hill was available. He threw 4 pitches on Saturday, but I don't necessarily feel confident with him coming into the game either. And so, I was texting with my dad earlier before this, and he was kind of like, I don't really understand how you can bring Garcia into that game. And there's two ways to look at it. On the one hand, he was just coming off of the IL. That's an incredibly high leverage spot to put him in. After not pitching for 2.5, almost 3 weeks. But on the other hand, he hadn't given up a home run up until that point in the entire season. And so who better than to come in and limit damage than Luis Garcia, when you're absolutely not trying to give up a long ball. And then what does he do? He goes and hangs one, and that's just kind of baseball. I don't think that this loss it should be pinned on Bob Melvin in the way that it was. I think it was some bad luck. And also going into the question from our patron Babbitt Roberts, who said, are the Padres records in 1-run games 4-12 and extra innings games 0-5 a trend? And how much is Bob Melvin a contributing factor to those losses? I don't think Bob Melvin is a contributing factor purely for the reason that last year we were 30-17 in 1-run games. And so I don't think you can have it both ways in that sense. I think it's really just bad luck, and that over the course of 162 games, you hope it evens out. That being said, I think that the sin of this game is not putting up 8 runs against Elsten Lamet, like you said, Craig. I think that's where we lost the game. It wasn't with the bullpen. It was with the offense.
Well, and they had their shot. That bases loaded moment was the moment where you knock in 2 there, you knock in 3, all of a sudden, you've put up 5 or 6 on Dinelson, and that fits right in with his season ERA. But it's a shot right to where it goes. Soto's out. Soto had a snake bit game. We can kind of say the same thing about the whole season. And that's why it's 162 games. In August, they could be 15-2 in 1-run games. We don't know. It's not Bob Melvin's fault that the team can't put up the runs needed against Lamet in that situation. It's chance.
I've told this story before, but when I was doing with Ben Higgins pre and post game for the Padres, game in and game out, there was a game, and I want to say it was 2002, but it might have been 2003, where in Colorado, the Culiacan kid, Oliver Perez, was on the mound for the Padres and absolutely humming. And very Snell-like, got through 7 shutout innings with a 2-run lead in 80 pitches, 82, 75, 78, somewhere in there, like a super manageable, super efficient pitch count through 7 shutout innings. Rockies completely stonewalled, and Bruce Bochy went to the bullpen and, went to his really bad bullpen, and they coughed up the game. And I walked in, and just like Babbitt and just like a couple of the other guys in our Discord, I just threw the hammer at Bruce Bochy on the post-game show and was like, this is just mismanagement. This guy was cruising. How do you take him out? Why do you go to these totally unreliable relievers? This was a managed loss. This loss should be on Bochy. It shouldn't be on Brandon Villaferte or Jarrett Wright or whoever gave up the lead that day, or Jeremy Feacock or whoever it was, right? And then when the team got home, I found out that Oliver Perez asked out of the game. And that no one's going to say that. No one's going to say, Bruce Bochy isn't going to run up to the podium and go, well, Oliver Perez asked out of the game. I wasn't going to take him out, because managers don't do that, because then you'd be a shitty manager that every player on the team would hate, because they'd know that anytime anything went wrong, their manager would run up to the press and say it was their fault, Bobby Valentine style. So that day I realized, I don't know shit, unless you're there. And I know that can sound elitist. And I understand why folks are like, well, hey, independent podcast space, let's just dig in. Let's get into the criticism. But I've learned this over my career. If you're not there, if you're not in his office in the morning when the pitching coach comes in and says, Hader doesn't have, we should not pitch Josh Hader today. That just, I get it. You might want to, but you really, really should not. And by the way, you shouldn't pitch these guys either. And Nick's gone 2 days and he says he can go, but do you really want to push that? You probably shouldn't. And those are the times where you're going to make a decision. well, hey, if it's the 8th inning, we're going to go to Garcia. We signed this guy to a 2-year contract to be a late inning reliever for our team. Last year, Luis Garcia was the 7th inning reliever for this team on the regular. He was part of the victory formula. So giving him the ball, a sinker ball, hard throwing pitcher in Colorado, like, he's on the staff for a reason, guys. He was activated for a reason. Sure, it seems like a bad spot in hindsight, but that's results-oriented thinking. You've got to think process-oriented, right, Rafe? And to me, the process of all of these decisions was extremely logical and sound.
We haven't even brought up so obviously Snell had like an unbelievable game. 7 innings, 12 strikeouts, no walks. Okay, 1 earned run that was a solo home run, and like that with the and that was it. He was absolutely humming.
It was the closest we've seen him to the World Series, Blake Snell. Like this performance was the closest to that.
And notably, he only threw 85 pitches and did not come out for the 8th because he took a line drive off of his ankle, and which started swelling up, as was reported after the game. Do you think that Bob Melvin, who has a leash a mile long, would not have put Blake Snell on 85 pitches back out there for the 8th? Of course he would have. So when we're talking about like the management and luck and everything like that,
and
I think
what we know,
it's just a manner of playing with the cards that are dealt. And I will go back to it again. It's like, you want to be, it's upsetting when the bullpen gives up a lead. It's upsetting. And because, especially in San Diego, historically, we've been spoiled with traditionally good bullpens, from Trevor Hoffman on, through, anytime Darren Balsley would turn go into the scrap heap and turn someone into a wizard, we have been blessed, and we're not accustomed to leads being lost like that. And so it's upsetting, and you want to blame something, but again, we will be hammering the drum as long as it needs to. It's the offense, stupid. It's the offense. It's Dinelson Lamet. You should be absolutely crushing him. So I don't blame Bob Melvin at all, Craig.
Yeah, and this game is played by humans. Something I thought about a lot on Sunday, before the game especially, was the psychology of Dinelson Lamet facing the San Diego Padres, the team for which he was as close to an ace pitcher as he'll ever be in his career, the place where he threw the best pitches of his career and then suffered injury and tried to come back, and it didn't work. And now he's on a division rival, and he's fought his way back from the minor leagues and fought his way through and he's been terrible. He's been absolutely terrible. I mean, I watched the last time he pitched, and he was an absolute train wreck. And you thought, okay, I mean, it's over for Dinelson Lamet. But if there was going to be one game that you would say that man would conjure up the best stuff that he's got left and have the best determined mindset that he would have for any game, it would be facing the San Diego Padres. I mean, there's just no doubt about it in my mind. It would be facing the San Diego Padres when he was the home team. He would be psychologically in a position to do the best that he could possibly do. And the best that he can possibly do right now is 5 innings, 3 runs allowed. Like that's the best Dinelson Lamet can do. And he did that on Sunday. And that wasn't shocking. Like, it was disappointing, but that's why Bud Black came up with, uses the phrase all the time. I mean, like, this is the kind of stuff that happens day to day in baseball. Someone has a reason that day to be more motivated than anyone else in the field. And that was Dinelson Lamet that day. That was the best he could do. Snell was way better. And I mean, honestly, the takeaway, Chris, is that Blake Snell has been on fire for like 6-7 starts now. He had like one mini clunker in there. This is the first time in Blake Snell's career that he went 6 or more innings, didn't walk anyone, and lost the game. He had won every other time, and this was a complete bummer of a loss, or else it would have happened again. Give me this Blake Snell, Padres are going to go on a run.
That's why I'm optimistic about the season going forward, because we didn't have our 3 going. And Blake Snell struck out 12 guys yesterday. 10 of them were on his curveball. That thing was disappearing into nothing. I don't think his feel for that pitch is going to go away, because it's been rocking and rolling now for a month. When he's locating his fastballs and getting ahead of guys, he becomes an entire different pitcher. because his off speed and his breaking balls move so much that they're not often going to be striked. They're successful when hitters are trying to protect against that fastball, and then the ball comes out of Blake Snell's hand. It looks like it's heading right down the middle or right in the lower end of the zone. And then once you start to swing, it falls off into the dirt. And also, kudos Gary Sanchez. I mean, he sees Snell well. He did a lot of diving around yesterday, blocking curveballs and throwing guys out at first after they had struck out. His performance alone um, makes that game not have a bad taste in my mouth, even though it was just so frustrating to watch, um, especially after like the fourth or fifth inning. And we can't control Major League Baseball's policy towards bad weather. You know, if they want to rush in a game to sell all the tickets and sell all the beer, and not care too much about the integrity of the outcome, then those are just what everybody has to play. So, yeah, bummed about it. It's a series win. Blake Snell is humming along. I think it's all right.
And Raphie, when I see Blake Snell pitching this well, throwing to Gary Sanchez, there's been an immediate reaction to be like, Gary Sanchez is good now. And turns out Gary Sanchez was the key. And I kind of look at it the opposite direction of this puts the lie to a year and a half of Padres pitchers must only throw to Austin Nola. They only care about throwing to Austin Nola, and Austin's the only one who really hears them and feels their feelings and understands the way they think about things. And like, bullshit. We just brought in like the worst defensive catcher and the guy that's supposed to be the worst at calling a game, and he sits back and sees the buttons pressed by the starters or presses the buttons themselves, and it all works. Like, what was this Nola slant for years? The puffery of Nola, I cannot abide.
Yeah,
it's a keeper of the secret knowledge.
Yeah. So I have to credit my co-pilot on the Pods Above Replacement Nerd Rocket, John Prakoda, on this. But one of the things we pointed out in our catchers episode that John had said was that the line of like, but the ERA of the pitchers is always so much better when they throw to Nola than it is to Alfaro or whoever, or Campusano or whoever it was. He catches the best pitchers. He catches Yu Darvish and he catches Joe Musgrove. Of course he's gonna have the better ERA. Like it's like such an absurd, like the minute you look past into the next layer of it, it's like, oh, of course it's bullshit. So I think like I see you put on our menu like, is Sanchez already out of his hot pocket because he's 2 for his last 14 and his 9 Ks in his last 22 at bats. And should Melvin be proactive? No, keep playing him, because I think it just proves even like a mediocre Gary Sanchez is still better than Austin Nola. I think in the way that we were gaslit by Eric Hosmer for so long of like what a competent first baseman is, the bare minimum of what that position entails. We, in a similar way, have been gaslit by Austin Nola from a defensive standpoint, and all these intangible phrases like game calling and like these things, leadership. That's like anytime someone starts quoting that and the numbers aren't there to back it up, like if someone's like, oh, they're a real leader, but they're hitting 187, like that's when you're starting to see the water being carried by people in the organization. So Melvin should be proactive in that he should continue playing Gary Sanchez. Okay.
All right. And I don't disagree at all. Absolutely. Yeah. Gary Sanchez should continue to play. I just want to be the first person in the Padres speaking world to tell you that Gary Sanchez is over his hot streak.
Yes.
It's already over. It was a short hot pocket, and the hot pocket is done. He has struck out in 9 of his last 22 at bats. He's had like 5 multi-strikeout games in his last 6 games. And when I mean proactive, I mean not batting him fourth. And
yeah,
it like looks really cool right now because it feels like it's lengthened out the lineup a great deal to have a home run hitting cleanup batter. And it is great. It's great, but it's probably over. And having a guy who strikes out 2 times a game as your cleanup hitter is going to make life harder on Manny. It's going to make life harder on Soto. And I just go ahead and put Bogaerts back into he's back. I don't know if he's back great or if he's not back great, but I just don't know that Sanchez is going to be the cleanup hitter answer next week. I think a week from now, you're going to hear other people talking about Gary Sanchez's 3 for 25 or whatever it lands on, as opposed to the 2 for 14 that I'm pointing out right now. That's all.
it.
Keep playing him. Nola's worse. Nola's
Yeah,
way
yeah.
worse.
He's got to be on the field, and maybe he's not taking every DH opportunity for a right-handed batter, especially with Nelly Cruz seemingly coming back.
Right.
It also might have just been a lot of a workload for him. I detailed how he kind of dropped off at the end of last season after being above average as a bat, and then just was completely worthless the last 25 games or so. I wouldn't blame the bro if he were tired. He just got picked up by a new team and flying around. Stoked about the 5 home runs right off the bat. Everybody should have known we weren't going to see Gary Sanchez hit 40 home runs in a Padres uniform this year. But just having him not be Nola will be huge. And then we have Luis Campusano in a matter of weeks. And then we get to really be upset or kind of have a similar episode that you guys had last year when Eric Hosmer waved farewell.
Yeah, I mean,
stubbornly, he didn't wave farewell. He kind of got dragged.
No. Got dragged out. Took Luke Voigt out with him, which we were all mad about at the time. Now Luke Voigt's available. No one wants him. Luke Voigt's just eminently available. So it's funny what we get mad about from time to time. But yeah, look, just like to put the flag up first. we knew Sanchez isn't going to be great forever, and I bet you he's already started his not great part of time here with the San Diego Padres. We're waiting for it. We expect it. At this moment, for our non-patrons, I'd like to remind you that Padres Hot Tub is an independent small collaboration. If you're watching on YouTube, you see the whole of it laid out in front of you. It's myself, it's Raphie, it's Chris. We work together to put this community together, to put this podcast network together, and we do it with the backing of our patrons. We do it with this incredible community that's grown since September of 2020 when we began and is now approaching 500 people, getting closer and closer, helping us to do this show, helping us to be able to have the wherewithal to continue to do this show and to continue to put this Padres content out there for you. So if you're a free listener to the show, thank you. If you're a free viewer on YouTube, thank you. You're the bedrock of our listening base. You're the bedrock of our viewing base. We appreciate you so much. If you like what you do, what we do, and you'd like a little bit more, patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub, patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub is the way you can support the show. You can do it for as low as $5 a month. You can do it for as much as $30 a month, which several people do. We incentivize you on every level. We make sure that it's money that you're going to, when you go into a cost-cutting phase, you're going to look at this and go, no, this is something I get my money's worth. The Discord is worth the price of admission. To be sure, ad-free episodes. You'll never hear this ad again. Patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub. And hey, the chance to go to a lot of Padres games. I mean, I feel like it's every single homestand that we're dropping multiple games onto the platform and saying, hey, big patrons, huge patrons, who wants to go? Who wants to come to a game with us, or who wants to take our tickets and go to a game? There's a lot of benefits. So check it out. Patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub. Okay, speaking of our patrons, which if you didn't hear the ad, you don't know what the reference is. We asked for a couple of questions prior to recording this because we had an earlier recording window. And Uncle Fryer wrote a very compelling question, guys, as we continue to look forward. Presuming we hit our target, presuming the Padres are contending and are in a position to buy at the deadline, should San Diego pursue a right fielder at the deadline? Should that be an area of focus, specifically right field, optioning Tatis to center field, optioning Grisham to a fourth outfielder platoon bench role, or are we defensively better off with Tatis as a right fielder, where he's been maybe the best in the game, and Grisham as a center fielder, where he's been fine, defensively all season long? it's a really interesting question, and I'm interested in what both of you guys have to say. Chris, what do you think?
I think he's been better than fine defensively, Craig. I think he's been good. Like the defensive metrics, it's earlier in the season. They need a whole year to get all the data that gives you a clear picture. The eye test, he's been great. He has range that not, you know, 5 center fielders have in the major leagues. He gets a great read on the ball, and he's been making catches. Obviously, the Padres need Trent Grisham to be a 700 OPS guy for him to be like the long-term solution in the outfield. Like, you're not looking at Trent Grisham as a bedrock of your franchise if he keeps playing the way he has the last season and a half. But he's also not the reason they're bad either. Like, he gets on base, the dude has a role, he has an offensive profile that can play when using it right. It is not his darn fault. If you're going to get rid of that glove in center field, put Fernando Tatis Jr., an ongoing experiment as an outfielder, to your most important position in the outfield, that upgrade better be huge. And I don't see that on the market. Or who are we talking about? We're talking about like I know he plays left, but like a Jock Peterson type. It feels like a Ryan Ludwig situation. If you're unloading a lot to try this experiment with Tatis in center field, you better be getting back a bat that I don't think is available.
I agree vehemently with Chris, and I think it is. I think Uncle Friar's asking the right question, but at the wrong position. The Padres should be pursuing a first baseman. Okay.
Yes, Raphie. Yes,
This
first base.
this is the idea behind having a defensive center fielder like Trent Grisham, who after a slow defensive start is now back up to the 90th percentile in terms of outs above average, okay, and is playing the rock solid center field that we need and a championship team absolutely needs. He is supposed to be the worst bat in the lineup. He is supposed to be. He is supposed to essentially be occupying the pitcher spot and you know, and if he's the worst hitter on your team, you're okay. I just want to point out, and I'm not saying this in some sort of slanderous way. He still has a higher WRC plus than Manny fucking Machado. Okay, so
Right.
if we want to talk
it's
about
a bit slanderous, a bit,
yeah,
just a tiny bit.
I put a little stank on it. I'm sorry.
It's got
Okay?
some sprinkle of slander.
I got some sprinkles on that. But like again, when we're talking about like what needs to be fixed for the team to succeed, it's still Manny and it's still Xander. And I'll bring it back to what I started this point with. I'm trying. It's really hard when you're talking to try and look up stats at the same time. So maybe after I pass the baton back to one of you guys, I'll find this. But our first base position is still not generating any value at all, and that is the place where we are absolutely missing slug on this team, and we're not getting any of it. And I don't think it's Jake Cronenworth's fault. He was an all-star second baseman, and they moved him out of position because that's for everything I was saying at the beginning about Preller having this great roster construction idea of having the 4 WAR players and the correlation to expected wins. His absolute Achilles heel is that players can play anywhere, and that's just not how it works. He tried it with Will Myers, he tried it with a bunch of other guys, and he's trying it with Jake Cronenworth, and it doesn't effing work. And so, should the Padres be looking to upgrade at the deadline? Absolutely. They need a first base bat, and they need to figure out some sort of like 4-man rotation for the 3 defensive spots of Machado, Bogarts, Cronenworth, and Kim. One of them's DH, and then the other 3 are playing, and it's a way to get guys off the field. And then if you want to have the odd day where Cronenworth's at first, get all of them in the lineup and have a different DH in, then that's fine too. But we're absolutely like losing our eye on the ball here. We need a real slugging first baseman for this lineup to be complete, Craig.
I think both of your guys' thought processes are sound. The only thing I would add to the right field v center field discussion, I'm again going to come back to these are humans playing baseball, and Fernando Tatis Jr. has adjusted to right field. He has embraced it, and he's terrific. He's fucking terrific in right field. He catches everything. He's dynamic. He's interactive, and his arm is a weapon. It's an absolute weapon. And it's not going to be the case to the same extent in center field as it is in right field. You don't get the same throws to third base. You don't get the same throws home that you get in right field. And there is the potential, once again, of taking somebody who's doing something well and is adjusting to 18 months away from the game and is finding his power and finding his bat and finding his legs and saying, okay, you've been doing all this, now do something new, and having that affect the other aspects of his game. And that is something the Padres, quite frankly, cannot afford to do. The Padres cannot afford another protracted down stretch from any of their top four if they're going to get to where we need them to get by the end of the year. We talked about it Thursday at the 60 game mark, or the 62 game mark. The Padres had to go 60-40 to get to 89 wins, and they've gone 2-1 since then, and they need a whole lot of 2-1 to get there. I don't want to mess with a good thing, and Tatis in right field is a good thing right now. So beyond opportunity cost and beyond Grisham and defense and bottom of the order, I'm thinking about Tatis, and that's why I wouldn't necessarily want to make that move. First base, definitely the better spot, but then you're going to be taking Rafe, either Cronenworth or Kim, out of the lineup every game. If you're not taking Bogarts and Machado out, you're taking one of Cronenworth and Kim out of the lineup. And I think not playing Ha-Seong Kim is bad for the San Diego Padres. I think keeping the best glove, who's an emerging bat, in the lineup is a good thing for the Padres.
I agree with you. And also, I got the stats. From the first base position this year, the Padres are slashing 180 with a 288 on base percentage and a 338 slugging. That's a 626 OPS. So that's a 77 OPS plus across the league. But for first baseman, it's a 65 OPS plus. So
yeah, Raphie, for the new ones, which position on the field is supposed to be the best offensive player?
That would be first base, Christopher Reed. And the issue is that, so it's that 65, OPS plus specifically for first baseman. That means we're basically playing with 2/3 of a first baseman offensively every game. So that's the disadvantage we're talking about. So do I want to keep Cronenworth and Kim and Bogarts and Machado in the lineup every day? Of course. That being said, I think having not a real first baseman is more, if we were to fix that, that's actually more beneficial to the team than making sure all four of those dudes are in the lineup on any given day, because that's how much value we are missing from that position. So, and I think, again, it's the sort of thing where, like, then you can, when you have those four guys for three defensive positions, you can really start to get into platoon matchups and like figuring that up and like what you want to do. And, if you want Bogarts, considering he might have just a bum wrist and maybe needs some more time off, good thing we have, Ha-Seong Kim to be there and fill in and maybe give him some more days off of his feet when you need to. I just, we're getting kind of away from the beginning question of the right field, center field thing, but that's the number one change I would make to the team right now is get a real first base bat.
And to your point, Craig, with Tatis moving around, everybody thinks he can cover center field instantly. Folks, these guys are not baseball cards. They are not, baseball cards on MLB The Show. You can't pitch Josh Hader 4 days in a row without, risking a significant injury or seeing his velocity drop 3 points. You can't just move Fernando Tatis Jr., a lifelong shortstop, over to the defensive captain of the outfield. The ball comes off the bat differently. Everything's changed. You can't just do it. They're human beings with life, with whole journeys built into their baseball habits. It's not 1 versus 1. It doesn't happen instantly.
And it's also the exact same move that Preller makes that we were just criticizing about. He just takes guys and puts them in other positions. It's the same thing. It's the same thing, Craig.
That's it. So that's the answer, Uncle Fryer. We are unanimously against messing around in the outfield, and we all think that first base logically is the best spot to improve. And having said that, we all know the Padres' history of trying to do these things and how it just absolutely sucks. And I'm trying to figure out which shooting star Roman Candle top of market first baseman having his irrationally best year, a la Josh Bell last year, are we going to try and scoop up? I know a lot of people said CJ Cron, who has had back problems all year. is 33 and has had back problems all year with the Colorado Rockies. And last year in a full season managed to not put up an 800 OPS in Colorado. He's like a high 700s.
You want to hear Chris's dream wish? You want to hear my want?
Sure.
It would be reversing an error from the past, which is letting Paul Goldschmidt get traded to the Cardinals for nothing. Paul Goldschmidt's in the last year of his contract. The Cardinals are almost the worst team in the National League, with a farm system that's pretty deep but could use some oomph. I wouldn't mind seeing Goldie in the Padres. I'd like to see Machado to Goldie. That's what I want. That's my manifestation for this episode.
Didn't he win MVP last year?
I believe he was the most valuable player in the National League, Craig Elsten.
So, well, that's very, very Preller. Can we dig into this for just a second? I haven't even thought or considered that the Cardinals would, and they probably wouldn't, right? They probably
I don't know,
wouldn't.
man. They're in a really bad. They're in a bad shape. Like, this year is almost done, and if they can't extend him, I think he's 37 years old. He's going to have an interesting Jose Abreu like market at the end of the year, where some team might pop in and pay him $25 million, and the Cardinals might not want to do that for a little bit.
I don't know. They would be punting on 2024 essentially, and I don't think that I think that they're willing to look at their really poor start this year as more of an aberration and trying to retool around the edges and run it back next year.
He's not a free agent next year?
No, he's got one more year at $26 million.
Oh, then I'm going off of flawed logic.
Yeah. I'm not sure the Padres can afford to trade for Paul Goldschmidt, and that can maybe serve as a long off-ramp to a different discussion. With a year and a half in his contract, the Padres definitely can't afford to trade for Paul Goldschmidt.
Yeah, I thought he was a rental. A year and a half is a completely different story.
And
that's like
he
Jackson
would be
Merrill territory.
We added another MVP to the San Diego Padres.
I don't know. It's pretty on brand.
It would be very on brand. Right. We'd trade Jackson Merrill. We'd
Snelling.
Right. We'd trade like pretty much 3 great prospects at least to get Paul Goldschmidt, add another $26 million player to the roster. Another one. So are we trading Cronenworth in that deal? Probably we would. Or Kim.
They got a lot of middle infielders. They're a weird group, them Cardinals.
I don't see it, man. I don't see it.
I was going off the rental thing, and I don't know why I thought that. So sorry for getting everybody's dreams machines fired up.
You did make me think for a minute, that's for sure. Because it's so Preller. It would be like I mean, what are these? Rafe, I sometimes, that old fly on the wall thing, like, I really do wonder, like, what are those jam sessions like when he's really brainstorming? And is it as simple as like picking up the sporting news, so to speak? Like, well, who's on the top of the list? Let's get that
I'll bet
guy.
you it's kind of Kendall Roy-ish. I'll bet you it's
yeah,
that,
he's like taking
that
off
flavor.
his shoes and no, I mean, like, do you remember when during the COVID season when Petco was shut down? I can't remember who took a photo of it, but they had the front office had put a basketball hoop on the concourse, and AJ was shooting and whatever. That's what I think it is. I think he's hooping, and that's when he's having his thoughts, and it's like Billy Bean in the weight room in the Moneyball movie. Which is like the best PR move for Billy Bean ever, by the way. Just like, what does Billy Bean do when he thinks, oh, it's Brad Pitt lifting? Like, this is the greatest. Like, can I get that for my fucking thing? It's like, what is Raphie like when he's thinking, oh, it's Ryan Gosling doing crunches? Like, anyway, I think that's what it is. I think he's hooping on the cover.
Oh, that makes so much psychological sense.
For me, it's Artie Lange forming meatballs in a dirty kitchen.
Yeah, no, I could just see that though, Rafe, especially him hitting some like outlandish 3-point shot. Right? Like just
He's
casts.
literally on the concourse. He's like, all right, if I make this shot, I trade for Austin Nola.
Exactly.
All right,
Hey.
walk it off.
Because
It all
shooters
makes
shoot,
sense.
right? Shoot your
Yeah,
shot.
shooters
Shooters shoot. That's pretty much
Shooters shoot.
AJ's attitude. So,
Yeah.
oh my God.
Oh,
I think you may have solved. You may have figured it out.
Yeah.
You may have figured it out.
According
but it does,
to sources, he beat somebody at horse, and Austin Nola is forever a Padre.
Okay, but guys, last week we kind of wrapped up the show talking about Too Much Morton's thread and talking about potential issues within the construction of the front office of the Padres, and I think we got pretty down on Preller. Through that. No, we gave AJ Preller the criticism he deserves for the franchise he's put together. It's so easy just to true believe your way through everything. That's not the space that we inhabit. And baseball's stupid and unwatchable, but we still do the show anyway. Nonetheless, Kevin Acee, who puts his name on his work, and hey,
there it
30
is.
seconds.
That's all it is. That's
Yeah.
all it is. That's the only thing. No tirades here. Just put your name. That's all you need to do.
30-second aside, I've chatted with HJ. I know he and Corey had a pretty strong Quintelligence, which contained a segment that was a direct response to this show, and in particular to my preamble to our discussion, and saying like, no, we're telling you he's reliable. Like, cool, man. And like, do I not believe HJ? I believe HJ. HJ says he has proof that the Padres had a witch hunt at the end of last weekend to try and find the leaker. Like, okay, totally cool. The simple point I was making is this is why the hallowed halls of journalism came to exist, was so that you had somebody put their name on their work, that you knew where they were, that you knew that they interacted with the team, that you knew that they could be held accountable for saying something or reporting something incorrectly. That is it. That's it. And I'm sure that I'm not sure, but I'm confident that Too Much Morton's thread was accurate to largely accurate. Acee, which sometimes maybe we've had some questions about along the way. His story Friday, guys, I think the word I'd use is ominous. It had an ominous tint to it, which was echoing in many ways the same thing that we have said. The time is now. The Padres have to get going. If they don't get going, achieving their dreams becomes increasingly unrealistic. The part that he dug into, though, was that the Padres might be at the edge of their leverage. And that's interesting. Are the Padres spent out? Have the Padres actually maximized their available revenue streams and are operating at near 100% capacity in terms of money in to money out, and really don't have room to make the next move, or maybe might have to make a move if they don't win and win soon to get themselves to a position of sustainability in the longer term? And what does that look like? It seems to me, Chris, it looks like Juan Soto being traded. Like the most simple and direct thing that you could do is trade Juan Soto as opposed to trying to sign Juan Soto. It does add a scare factor to what's happening.
Well, whenever any of us have talked about this, and I don't mean us podcast hosts, I mean Padre fans, we go, well, it's not my money, so it's okay as long as the tap stays open. As long as it keeps coming. If this is their strategy, well, then I'm fine with it as long as it keeps going. If it stops, if they're now red stoplights in front of them as far as spending, they've already got so little flexibility in the roster. Juan Soto is going to have an arbitration number that might break a record. That's real money. That's a building in Gallagher Square or whatever they're going to be putting there. But you hate it because this is the window. You need Juan Soto in the lineup with Machado, Tatis, Bogarts. You went out and got Xander Bogaerts so you could have that fourth big bat, like Raphie was talking about win probability. You have the 4 big bats. It goes way up. That's why you had it, not because Xander Bogaerts was a once in a generation thing. No, he was just one of the big bats that was still available for you at the end of the year. That's why you got him. So if you're unloading Soto, um, the plan isn't working. And yeah, that's scary as heck because we've all been in the darkness. Like we were born in it. We know it very well. And trading Juan Soto is harkening back to bad days. And yeah.
Rafe, I'll just say it again because I think it's important to the conversation. Like, I still think the Padres could very well be on the verge of a breakout. I think the Padres could be on the verge of 2 months of 650 baseball, of every day coming to the park feeling very confident that they have a chance to win, every day coming to the park as soon as Lugo gets back, feeling like they've got a starter on the mound that gives them an excellent chance to win. They've got a bullpen that can back them up. They've got a defense that's tremendous. And they've got 4 guys who should be 4+ WAR hitters at the top of their lineup. So the chance that the simplest path forward is the Padres win, they succeed, all of this recedes into the background as they continue to take in money and have a big year. I still think that's the most likely, whether it's plurality outcome or majority outcome for the Padres season. I still do believe that is the case. Acee's exploring the what if, the nasty, dark what if. And it really kind of gets nasty and dark, doesn't it, Rafe? When you look at it, because like who could you move in a pivot out, in a restructure where you're not tearing it all down, where you're not going for in 2024 we're bad, we're going to come right back in 24 and try and be good. What could we move? It's Soto, it's Snell, Hader. And what does that do to the bottom line for the franchise that might be leveraged to the max and bringing in the most money?
We will be bad in 2024 if we trade Juan Soto. Like, sorry, that's like he's the linchpin of our. What I was talking about earlier about you need 4 of the 4 WAR guys. The minute you go down to 3, your expected wins tank. And we also, by the way, don't have anyone in the farm system to come up and take that spot, because if you're trading Soto, you're trading for prospects that are going to need time to develop. So they wouldn't be ready to cut. You're not going to have like fresh baked prospects in 2024. There's a very limited list of people that would fit that bill of someone who's like ready to come up and then be a star caliber player, So I think trading Juan Soto is about the worst thing that the franchise could do, both from a financial standpoint and from a tactical standpoint, because you're going to get a worse return than what you traded away for him. So it's like, what are you even doing at this point if you're going to be trading ones? I think it's really silly, and I think that the team would also have to really tank from this point until the trade deadline for these conversations to really happen. And if that's the point, I mean, like, yeah, you could talk about trading Snell and if you're going to be straight sellers at the deadline, trade Snell, trade Hader. I mean, maybe trade Ha-Seong Kim if you want to trade someone who we don't have who's kind of redundant on the roster in some way. Not that I agree with it, but has some years left and therefore has value and therefore I think would net you decent farm return, capital, whatever. But I don't see any of these scenarios playing out. I'm like way more bullish on the team, and I think way less aligned with this article of like how dire, quote unquote, things are, because I just don't think Peter Seidler also has, the dribblings of debt reduction not too long ago were put out in the press when the Padres didn't want to spend money. And we haven't, maybe this article is the first, but like we haven't seen that kind of water carrying from the media yet, where, they're starting to just leak the stories of like, we're not going to be spending money. If that hasn't happened yet. So I'm way more optimistic.
The only thing this article proves, Craig, is that you've been right all along. This is the most consequential season, and everybody in the organization is feeling it right now.
They're still selling out games. They're still selling out. You know what I mean? Like, we haven't seen that massive flight yet. And by the way, until MLS comes in a couple of years, they're still the only professional sports show in town, and they're going to be secure in a financial sense until that moment comes. So I think these next 2 years are critical, but I don't think they're going to be in a position where they're going to be, retreating. If that makes sense.
Here are the, I think, most relevant paragraphs from Acee's story, column, however you want to put it, that posted Friday on the Union Tribune. And from here, direct quote. How the Padres fare on the field in their next 30 games or so will probably set a course not just for the current season and whether a month from now they are looking to buy or sell at the trade deadline. Results now could set in motion machinations that determine a course of direction for the next season and the next decade. Things are perilously close to not working out. If that does come to fruition, the organization will have to grapple with how best to move forward. The Padres already face challenges related to future financial obligations, as they have a payroll pushing $250 million, have amassed imposing debt that multiple sources say cannot go higher, and possibly will have reached a revenue source plateau in the face of what would almost certainly be waning fan interest. The beautiful thing about time is that it's infinite. It can also be inflexible. And while there is time in the Padres' current situation, it's likely not on their side. If the clock strikes midnight sooner than expected, there is a great potential for job losses and perhaps even a tectonic shift in the franchise's philosophical direction. Those paragraphs are scary. Okay? Kevin doesn't. I'll stop myself. I was about to say Kevin's not going to write something like that unless he really and I do believe that. Kevin's not going to write that unless he's heard it from a lot of places. Okay? And the one phrase or the one sentence in that whole thing that really got me was multiple sources say they have amassed imposing debt that cannot go higher. So, to get to the point where if Paul Goldschmidt was an easily acquirable rental, that they're like, yeah, but we literally can't afford the $14 million more to go on the payroll. Like, if this is what we're leveraged to be, then this has got to be it. It's got to be good enough as it is right now in order. But it kind of really makes me worry, Raphie. Like, what is their plan for 2025? What is their plan for 2026? Or are we making it up as we go along?
I think it's a little bit of go through the window and try and win a championship and then figure it out later. I do think that they're just trying to go along in some way. I see that phrase, perhaps even a tectonic shift in the franchise's philosophical direction. To me, all of that just says what I think is obvious, which is that if they don't make the playoffs this year, then AJ Preller is going to be fired. It's
There
like
it
that's at
is.
least that's what it's implying to me. And honestly, I don't know how you can argue that that shouldn't be the case. You know what I mean? Like if you're given the keys to this kingdom and
I,
this go ahead, Chris.
I think if you're Peter Seidler and AJ Preller starts talking to you in late July about who he's going to trade because his team is 7 games under 500, that's when you say goodbye to him, because we've seen this story before.
Yeah, I mean that's that's part of the things I worry about is like Preller trading for his job essentially, and then the whatever
Right.
last scraps we have in this farm
Yep.
system are now gone in hopes of capturing a season that's already been lost. That's what I'm scared about. Not that any of this financial shit. Okay, it's like it's that we're going to play and do a tactical blunder because we're not in acceptance of a reality that potentially may exist or doesn't exist, but certainly doesn't exist now. And we are, very much still in the possibility of making the playoffs. Which, by the way, now that we have 3 wild cards teams, like 86 wins gets you to the playoffs. Basically, it's like it's in that neighborhood of 86, 87 wins, whereas before you needed to be pushing 90. So, I think we're very much still in it, and I think this is a little bit of I think it's very necessary reporting. I think there needs to be a counter to the kind of just happy-go-lucky joy we're spending money, whatever that we've had in Padres land in the last several months. But I think there's a lot to be written from a baseball standpoint before we get to the implications that this article is implying.
Yeah. And this is the way to end the show. We started it with a target. The target's 15-10. Okay. That's 25 games. And 40% of that is going to get spent in the next 10 days. Starting on Tuesday, the Padres will play Cleveland 3 times. They will play Tampa Bay 3 times, and they will go to San Francisco for a 4-game series. And the problem with where the Padres are right now, today, at 31-34, is that they need to go 6-4 in those 10 games in order to make incremental progress toward that target. And if they went 5-5, okay, then you're counting on big series wins in Cincinnati, big series wins in Pittsburgh, taking care of the Mets at the end of the All-Star break. Like, you're starting to pick certain series after these 10 and going, these are must sweep, not just must win. These are must sweep series. But the flip is, if you have one lull in these 10 games, and just look at the 4-6 of it all, then you're 5 games under 500 with 15 games left to the All-Star break, and you need to play 7 over in that stretch just to get to the bare minimum of where you need to be. So this is one of those, you can't win the season in these 10 games, but you kind of could lose the season in these 10 games. Padres can't afford to go to San Francisco and get swept. Padres can't afford to go to San Francisco and lose 3 out of 4. Like, they could maybe barely afford to do that if they had a 4-2 homestand. If they took 3 from the Guardians and then took 1 out of 3 from Tampa, like, maybe they could get away with losing 3 out of 4 in San Francisco, but more likely they need to win that series. And if they're gonna break out, if they're on the verge of a breakout, they need to go 7-3 through these games. They need to take advantage and beat these teams, and this is where they get on a roll. So I don't think there's a more important stretch than these 10 games coming up.
They need a streak at some point, like a legit one. I know we just kind of got one. We got a Lou Brown definition of a streak, but they need one of these real ones, 6, 7, double digits. And I think the team's capable of it. I know the team's capable of it. And I do think there's signs of a breakout, Craig. We're a Sanchez now. They're shedding some. They're shedding some of these players that are underperforming in a little bit, in little ways. And the fact is that the Padres starting pitching is going to be better going forward, with Blake Snell playing the way he is, with Musgrove dialing things in, Darvish figuring things out. I still think that the starting pitching on this team is a huge strength that hasn't met expectations, just like the offense.
You were referencing those. Let's see, we have a series against the Nationals at home, followed directly by a series in Pittsburgh and a series in Cincinnati, and then a back home to face the Angels. And Craig, when you were talking about it, you were talking about like those now become like must sweep or whatever in terms of the severity of like needing to win those games. I think you need to be winning those games by huge margins regardless. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if they want to play, if they really want to be taken seriously as an organization this year, like, you have to be beating those teams no matter what. Even if you go on a 7-3 run in these next 10 games, you then also need to be beating up on those teams, and that then turns the Padres into that 65% win percentage ball club that we've been hoping for and talking about. So I know we're framing things in the 15-10 target window, and like, I know that I'm not making a very intelligent radical point of like, if they win every game they play, that would be cool. But like, but I just mean that like in the sense of when we were breaking down the Dodgers and the D-backs earlier and seeing how they perform, like just to get to the level that they are that the Dodgers and D-backs are performing at against 500 teams, they would basically need to sweep those series altogether. And so, like, they're going to have to start playing like this at some point if they want to. The question is, why not now? And, I think certainly coming home and playing a very strong series against the Guardians would be a good place to be well on the way to that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm making a similarly dumb point, but it's like if right now the schedule was Washington at Cincinnati at Pittsburgh, then we'd be looking at this and going, okay, this is the here we go.
Yeah.
You know, we just won 7 out of 12. We just won 5 out of 7. You know, we could have swept a series in Colorado. Now we've got these cupcakes coming. Now we got to put that 8-1 up. And the difference is, like, if you then went through that 6-3 or 5-4, like, you're okay. But these 10 games, you just can't afford to have Cleveland come in and boss you. You can't afford to have Tampa come in and sweep your ass and knock you down. Padres can't afford a lull. They can't afford another lull. They've got to get rolling. And fact is, they've got 3 decent clubs in a row here, including the team with the best record in baseball. And it's put up or shut up time. It's put up or shut up time for the San Diego Padres. Machado's got to be hot. Soto's got to be hot. Bogart's got to be healthy. Tatis got to keep doing his thing. The pitching you've talked about, it's got to come together. And we can't just go, 3-7. Don't worry about it. We're fine. 3-7, that could kill our season in the next 10 games. That could literally kill this season and send us toward tectonic plates and AJ Preller being handcuffed at the deadline to a radiator and not allowed to shoot a shot, and the whole thing. So it's go time, guys, including for us. It's time for us to go. Let's go and say, go Padres.